for a lot of people, I just got another one. Oh, got it. You're live streaming me now, Faye. Just trying to put on some of the extra pressure, huh?
Yes, we are.
So yeah, with the owner-occupied financing, there's FHA loans, there's also VA loans we can kind of talk about, and it's just for a lot of people, they don't have the initial amount of money to put down a rental property, and this allows you to get into a property for less. And just like any rental property, you get the same type of investment benefits, right? Like you have appreciation over time as your property increases in value. You have loan pay down while your renters are helping you pay down your mortgage. There's different tax benefits. If you live in a third of the building, you can still, write off 2/3 of what the other building is doing. And then there's cash flow. And I guess I put asterisks here just because the cash flow might not be there right away, like you would look at a regular rental property. But if you factor in how much your rent could be versus what it could be if you're house hacking, you have to look at that as the equation. Like for me, for instance, I was spending like $1,200, actually $1,300 a month in rent in Chicago for my 1-bedroom. And then once I moved into my 3-unit, you'll see later how much money I was able to save just by doing that. But the idea too is for me, I knew I wasn't going to live in this property forever. So you do have to look at things like, okay, does it make sense for me now? And when I move out, is it still going to cash flow? If that's your goal, to have a rental, moving forward. But it really wasn't until I started putting properties side by side that I really started seeing the benefits of what house hacking was going to do for me. And I think it's good to look at this right here where, a single family home with 3 beds and 2 baths, $300,000, right? And then here we have a 3-unit for $650,000. But if you look at this side by side, because right away, a lot of people would be like, whoa, there's no way I could afford that. But you really have to factor in the rent that is coming in to help you subsidize that. So just looking at the numbers here, a house that's $650 compared to $290, even putting down the 3.5% down, which is $23,000, versus some people assume that you have to put 20% down, like this in the single family home over here. I did the numbers to show even if you put 20% down on the single family home, what it's going to look like against the multi-unit. So this is obviously dated. As you can see here, the loans is 3%, and we could only wish for those right now. But for the purpose of this, you're still going to be able to kind of see what I'm trying to show here. We have our monthly mortgage payment, loan to value. There's 20% down. There's the 3% down. PMI. Now, granted, when you do utilize an FHA loan, you're going to have to pay private mortgage insurance. That just comes with the package. And some people think like, I don't want to spend that money. But for me personally, I just look at private mortgage insurance as being the cost of doing business. Homeowners insurance, property taxes, right? And then, and again, looking at it side by side, $4,200 compared to $1,500 seems like a lot of money. But what you have to factor in here is the rents that you're going to be getting from the other units. And most people, when they're saying, what can I afford, are looking at things from a monthly payment standard. And right here, you can see this single family home, even if you were to put 20% down, is still costing you almost $1,600, right? Whereas this multi-unit that you leveraged owner-occupied financing for, and because the rents that are coming in, it's still costing you around $1,600. So that's just showing you from a standpoint of what you might think you can afford to what you can actually afford with the help of others. So how the deal was found, I would say, like, first, before any deal is found, you have to kind of have your mindset and you have to be ready for it. Like, you want to have to find a deal and commit, and knowing that you that's something you want to do moving forward. I knew what I wanted as far as house hacking. I had an idea. There were several realtors that I had been talking to in the past in Chicago, and they didn't really understand exactly what I was trying to accomplish. So I finally had found a realtor that understood, like, hey, I want a house hack. This is what I want to accomplish. And so I would suggest, number one, off the bat, just make sure that you find somebody who's aligned and understand your overall goals. And that's kind of where it started. And also find a lender. It's good to be ready to rock and roll. If you're pre-approved, shows that you're serious and can help with the process. So this was the unit that my realtor brought me to, and I'll tell you what, like looking at it from the get-go, I'm just like, it's not that attractive. It wasn't something that was my forever home, but again, it was that mindset of knowing exactly what I personally wanted to do, which was acquire a property, live in one of the units for a while, and then move out and keep it as a rental property. So what was more important to me was, do these numbers make sense for the long term? And so again, I wasn't sold on the beauty, but I was sold on exactly what I wanted to accomplish. But what I did like was that there was a newer roof, there were newer windows, there were individual boilers, there was updated electricity. And that was all super important because that comes down to dollars, right? Like those are the really expensive items that you have to make sure that you're accounting for in the long term. And the fact that there's individual boilers means that I'm not going to be responsible for all of that. So that helps with that monthly cash flow, the fact that I can push that responsibility onto the tenants themselves. And then the updated electric was just big, especially in the township that I purchased in, because if it wasn't updated, like that was something upon purchasing a home that you'd have to invest in right away to get upgraded. So kind of just looking at the list price back in February 2019, when I was originally looking at this, it was $320,000. And I guess the seller felt that as time went on and they didn't sell it, they still felt like it was a little worth more. So they bumped it up to $329,000. And just to do a quick analysis, if you haven't heard of the 1% rule, you should always just see what the gross monthly rents are, and if it's equal to or greater than 1% of the purchase price. So the current rents as they had set, or the previous rents as they sat, was like the top unit was getting $925, the middle unit was getting $1,100, and the basement was getting $850. So I did a pro forma, because you always have to see what is the market rent in that area. Like what could you increase them to upon acquiring the property? And at the time, average rent was $1,200 for a 2-bedroom, and then $975 for a 1-bedroom. And again, it's 2, 2, and 1 on the bottom. So that becomes, $3,375. So if you're doing the 1% rule, for every $100,000, you want to make sure that you're making $1,000 in rent, right? So ideally, from a high level, just looking at that, you're like, okay, this seems like it could potentially be a good deal. And you always want to double check, right? It's important not to guess or assume or hope rents are going to be a certain way. Like do your research. And what you see here is a screenshot of, I use this website called Rentometer. And Rentometer, you put in the address, and it gives you, like on the left-hand side, that's the average for a 2-bedroom. On the right-hand side, that's an average for a 1-bedroom. And it'll give you a percentile range. And the percentiles are basically like, hey, the lower grade versus the higher grade. If you see some units that have maybe got new updates, have some love to it, right? But it's good to test that. Other things I look at is Zillow, actually looking up postings and seeing what's listed just to verify the amount and the market rent. Hot Pads is another one that I like, especially because they'll show exactly where the properties are in comparison to your property, like just on the map. And you can just to confirm, like, how close is it? Because I don't know where you live, but where I do, and in Chicago specifically too, a couple blocks can actually make the difference between what kind of neighborhood you're in. So you just always want to double check that stuff. So fast forward, I offered $310,000 and they signed. So I was on my way to utilizing my FHA. So FHA stands for Federal Housing Administration loan, all right? And what a lot of people think is right off the bat, they're like, oh, well, that's for low income folks. And you know, sure, it was created for like low to moderate income earners, but what a lot of people don't understand is it's not limited to that. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you can still leverage an FHA loan. It's more owner occupied, you know, standard. And what other people don't know as well is like, yeah, you can go up to 4 units. So a residential loan is anything from 1 to 4 units. And again, yes, mortgage insurance premium is required. For me personally, I don't mind paying that. It's keeping more money in my pocket. If you look at the $300,000 home, could I have put 20% down? Sure. So that's $60,000, right? But in this deal, because I leveraged an FHA, I got in for $12,000. So that's a lot of money that you can utilize for something else, right? And if the numbers make sense, yeah, doesn't anyone like more money in their pocket, right? Like my goal is to always try to get into deals the least amount that I can. And then the nice thing about this too is it's not forever. It says the rate remains for the life of the loan, but you can refinance out once you get 20% equity. So that could be either as time goes on and your property appreciates. There can also be some forced equity, right? Where you're throwing some love into the building and now it's worth more. Like there's ways to get out of that down the road. The last thing is you only have to occupy the unit for 1 year. I don't know if that's in here, but like that, because you only have to occupy it for 1 year, and then you have the flexibility to move to another place if you'd like. So as there are some FHA loan requirements, right? So you have to have a 580 or above to utilize a 3.5% down. And they do have, if it's a little worse, they have some other still low money down versus 20%, right? Options. They look at your debt to income ratio, which is basically your monthly debt divided by the payments, by your gross income. So how much you owe versus like how much you earn. And yeah, you should have a job. They like to see that. I guess the primary residence 1 year was here, but that's what that means. Typically, they do like to see 2 years of employment. That's kind of with like any loan, whether it's commercial or whatever, they like to see like a 2-year history. Now, when it comes to FHAs, another thing people don't realize is it depends on how many units you're going to. So if you go to the bank, you're like, hey, I want to utilize an FHA loan and I want to buy a single family home. Okay, well, they might say, okay, you're approved for $356,000. Okay, well, I want 2 units. Now it's $456,000. 3 units, $551,000. You see how this tiers up? There's 2 different sections here. One is like lower cost area and high cost area, because it depends on where you're utilizing this and where you're trying to buy. There's different FHA income limits. And the reason that they're giving you more money is because they're not just looking at your income now, they're looking at the income that the property can generate. And it's counting towards your income, and it's allowing you to purchase more home than you would by yourself. So there's a website here, like HUD has it, and you can look depending on where you want to buy to see exactly what your FHA mortgage limits are. I will note on this case right now, just like in the current market where prices are higher, You know, it's a little bit harder to maybe well, actually, there's going to be a part next. So here's where I'll talk about it. The self-sufficiency test. So self-sufficiency, basically, if you're in a single family or a duplex, you don't have to worry about this. But once you go to 3 to 4 units, you have to abide by what they call the self-sufficiency test. And basically, you need to prove that 75% of the rental income that's coming in is going to exceed the mortgage payment, right? So of the rents that are coming in, do 75% of them exceed the principal, the interest, the taxes, the mortgage insurance, and the homeowner's insurance? And now that's why I'm going to circle back and say, in this current market where the house prices are a little high right now, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to be able to find homes that the rent is going to be able to cover that 75% of that mortgage insurance, taxes, and such. Just to give you a forewarning. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but it's just definitely something to consider as you go out there and you know, search. Faye, did you have a question? I saw you.
Yeah. So 75% of the rental income. Now, if it's owner occupied, is that going to be calculated as part of the 100%? And
No,
how much is the potential? Okay, so it's just say I have a triplex, we're just going to be calculating the 2 units, not including the
correct,
one that's occupied.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Because you're supposed to be able to supplement the other 25%. And they factor in things like vacancy and such. The nice thing is they're doing this intentionally because they don't want to lose money, right? They want to make sure that you can afford it. So look at this rule as a good thing and a good limit, because if you're buying too much of a house and then you get in a certain type of financial situation yourself, like, you don't want to have to go underwater. So this rule is in place really to protect you and to protect them. And it really does speak on behalf of if this investment makes sense for you or not. That's the way I kind of look at it. You know, even with my home that I was in, I did have to get a little creative because a lot of times your you know, self-sufficiency response, right? Like sometimes you know that there's potential to increase the rents. Let me back up. So for the home I purchased, my appraiser, because the appraiser is the one that dictates like what they think the rent is, he did not give me that 1,200 and 975 that other places in the market were getting. When he did the appraisal, he said the market rent was based off of what the current rents were. And if you remember, it was, you know, 925, 1,100 and 8. It was a lower amount. So what you want to do, and we tried doing this, but I have heard other people be more successful with this. Try to get as much information ahead of time to that appraiser, like assist them if you can, to say like, hey, you know, look at the market rents over here, do this, do that. There was no budging of this case in this case, but what I had to do, there was 2 different options that I had. One was you could buy down with mortgage points, because essentially you have to get the monthly payment down to be able to hit that 75%. So I think it was, if I recall, like it was going to cost me $12,000 to be able to get my monthly payment was going to equal that 75%. And I'm like, well, dang it, extra $12,000, like that's defeating the purpose of what I'm trying to do by getting really low money down in this deal. And I don't know if I should be recording this per se, but what I ended up doing was I went to my person who was doing my insurance and I just like maybe had them really lower the amount of coverage that I had to just the bare minimum to show, and that decreased my monthly overall expense. And that helped me get to that 75% self-sufficiency standard that I had. And then after I acquired the property, what did I do? I went back to my insurance guy. I said, okay, I do want more coverage because that's risking it. And I bumped it back up. But then I also was able to do other things like increase the rents to where they were supposed to be, right? And that kind of took care of everything. You didn't hear that from me.
No, it didn't.
So again, looking at the property, what I wanted to do was, this is just kind of like an estimation of, and since it's going to be a rental in the long term, I just wanted to know where I was at, right? So when I was getting in, this is based off of after I purchased it, I knew that the top unit I could get $1,250 for. The middle unit I wasn't going to change; it was just going to remain at $1,100. PMI, yep, factoring that into the cost. You know, so you got your mortgage, your tax, your insurance, water, landscaping. I guess I did not, since I'm living in the property, I didn't equate for that. But long term, it's always good to factor in, if it's going to be a rental property later and you're not going to be doing that stuff, you really want to know your true cash flow. So that has to include anything that you're going to have to pay for, like landscaping and such, right? Electric, that is the common areas, because everything's individually metered, as you saw. So that's like the hallways, and where I'm looking at is like a cash flow after all of that is $312. So as a rental property, that looks like it's failing, right? But here's a couple of things you have to consider. Number one, this owner occupied unit is $0. That's the one I'm in, right? And then well, yeah, you have to consider that, because that would be a unit that's otherwise filled. Other things I like to throw into the mix that people don't always accommodate for are the things that you have to be saving for, like maintenance and CapEx. That's for all the big items like your roof and your windows and all that. Vacancy, because there will be vacancy when there's not somebody in the unit. And management. And so what I basically came out with, because I'm self-managing it, was a net cash flow of negative $664. Now, again, I was spending $1,200, $1,300 a month for my rent. Now it's only costing me, even being on the conservative side there, $664 to live at that point in this unit. So my initial loan amount was $304,385 at a 3% interest rate. There's all my total payments, including that PMI. In 2020, that was the rent that I had. In 2021, I bumped up that other unit, and you know, that was my total rental income that was coming in from the other two units compared to my total payment. Over here, what I wanted to show was just what this looks like. So initially, when you're looking at, you know, the cash on cash value here of 15% at this very bottom is really what's powerful here, is the fact that you're getting into this deal for low money down. So when you're factoring it in for those numbers, like, you know, you're really getting your value worth on that. And then also, again, including you in the equation and the rent that you're not paying or the mortgage that you're not paying because you're occupying the property. So fast forward, that was February 2019 when I closed on the house. That list price was $320. I purchased it for $310. And then moving forward, I just got it reappraised at earlier. Well, it was actually earlier this year, but I see that I might have made that January the wrong one. It was 2022. So, but it appraised for $405,000. So what that enabled me to do, remember I told you, like, once you get 20% equity, you're able to refinance out of that FHA loan, which is a big benefit. That was just a before and after, kind of just to show, like, yeah, it did look pretty dingy. You can still make things look nicer, right? But the power here is an FHA loan. I was able to go to a conventional loan now. I was lucky and got in before the rates spiked. So I did lock it in for 3.25%. You know, looking at the payment, it did go down 2,318 compared to 2,409. Now I'm not paying private mortgage insurance, which is huge. Now this is all going towards the loan, right? And furthermore, this has set me back up to be able to do this again. So now I can go back and use my FHA loan again if I can find another property. So today, you know, living in it, my total payment, my total rent, essentially, if you kind of factor in, if we factor in utilities like water and electric, I'm probably spending 150, 200 bucks a month to live. And so that's what I wanted to show, just like the power of house hacking and what it can do for you. Is that Ife?
So will you be renting out that one unit that you're living in?
Yes. So that's the next move. So that's the hope. So this year, what I want to do is I want to get another 3 unit if possible. I'm going to start looking, and I think that I can get. I think I can actually the number 2 unit. I've already talked to them about some upgrades that they want because they want to stay, and their rent's going to go up to $1,300 after I do that. And then my unit, I kept the garage unit for myself to really try to maximize it. I think I can get another $1,100 for this basement unit with the garage. So that'll definitely make sure that the property's cash flowing, and I'll be in a good position.
So that's gonna be like 3,725.
Yeah, you did the math. I you know, I probably should have showed like what it would be after all of that. But what I wanted to emphasize was I don't know where people are at in their journey, whether it's more like, hey, the rental, or like, hey, I want to be house hacker. I was just trying to emphasize like, what does that mean for you? But yeah, it's going to be cash flowing. It's going to be sustaining itself, and I'm going to go do it again.
Beautiful. So if you guys happen to have any questions tonight, just feel free to chime in. But while waiting for them, I think Cam has a question. Let me see. So individual electric panels as well?
Yeah, he did address that question. So he has individual meters for all the units. But I do have another question. When you move out of the property, will you continue to self-manage, or when you purchase another one, would you continue to self-manage?
So good question.
That's a great one.
I for the time being, I probably will, only because I know that maintenance wise, it hasn't been that of an issue because I've stayed on top of it. It's a decent neighborhood where I'm not having to deal with like problem tenants. But like long term and the way I want to go, I probably will eventually pass that off. What I didn't share in the beginning was I actually do have individual rentals as well in a different state that I self-manage, right? And so I'm very well aware of the problems that can happen. So that's always just that's a lifestyle choice at this point. But when I was looking at it, I factored in the cost of management to make sure that it was going to cover that if that was a decision I make.
And while you're house hacking, do your tenants know that you're the owner?
Yes, they do. And that is something that, you're going to have to either, I've heard different stories where some people are just like, I'm the manager, or they don't even say anything at all. Like the owner's in pick your state, so that's going to be, that was one reason, that was one of my hesitations when I first was like considering it. I'm like, can I really be the landlord and the tenant, and because there could definitely be some things you have to consider there, like your relationships or lack of, and how do you manage that, and do they become friends, and what does that mean? Or because they know who you are, does it mean they're not going to pay? Yeah, there's those variables you're going to have to kind of ask yourself, and it depends on what market you're in as well. Now, I did live in the city of Chicago, and But where I lived, I couldn't accomplish where I wanted. I was in a really nice neighborhood. I was a good renter, right? But I couldn't accomplish what I wanted because the prices were too high. So I did move out of the city to make the numbers work. And that was an adjustment in terms of lifestyle and all those type of things. But again, I just try to be as calculated as possible to say, like, is this a place that I could live? And yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we can add to that in terms of if you're considering to have someone else manage your properties, to incorporate at least 5 to 8% when you're doing your underwriting and your analysis as part of your cost as well. By the way, we got Johnny here in the building. Hey Johnny, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. What's going on, Nate?
How you doing, man? Long time no see.
Yeah, doing good, doing good. Sorry, I had a conflict with a podcast interview this evening, so.
Oh, not a problem, not a problem. Oh, one thing I will add too is I've even heard of some people that occupy their unit and still choose to have a property management company. So it all comes down to your comfort zone.
I agree 100%. And I think we have another question from Joel.
Yeah,
Hey Joel.
Nate, thanks for thanks for a great presentation, Nate. Very informative. You said that
Pleasure.
when you move at the end of the year, you're gonna go and do this again. Can you do it again with the FHA loan, or you have to use other means of financing?
Yes, so that's a very great question because this was something that I had to really look into. Number one, there's a couple rules when it comes to the FHA. You can't do two FHAs at one time, both being multi-unit. All right. So like if I did an FHA multi-unit, then I could go leverage an FHA and do a single family home, but I couldn't do another multi-unit. Another thing is there's stipulations on that too. Unless say you're in Illinois like I am right now, and I had an FHA loan, there are some distance rules. So if you're over 100 miles, if you're moving over 100 miles away, then you can qualify for another FHA multi-unit loan. But if the move is FHA, and then the second one is, okay, I want to do this again in year 2, but I'm still in the same area, you have to have a reason why you're moving to another location. So you can justify a lifestyle, a bigger place if you're living in one of the units, and then you're saying, no, I want my forever home, so now I'm going to a single family home. Like that's a justifiable type of move, but they're not going to let you leverage this knowing that you're trying to do it to be an investor, right? So you got to play that out. Once I was able to get 20% equity in my place, that was the move I made earlier last year where I refinanced out of my FHA loan. Now, technically, you're supposed to still wait like a year in that conventional loan before you're able to do it again. But there's multiple reasons why I chose the basement unit versus the other units, right? Is because I'm in this 1-bedroom basement unit. And not only is that making sense for me right now because I have higher incomes coming in from my other rent where I'm living for a really low money, right? But also, once I'm looking at other places, it's more justifiable to say, hey, I'm looking for a bigger place because I live in a 1-bedroom now, but I'm looking to move into a 2-bedroom for whatever reasons. And I have my reasons like, yeah, I work from home, I need an office, So, but once you get out of that FHA into that conventional, you're going to have more flexibility moving forward. And there's different loans out there too. I won't cover them on here, but like once I started getting involved with the real estate community locally and met all kinds of different lenders, you'd be surprised with what kind of money is out there where you might be able to get down 5% down, 10% down, and the stipulations change a little bit where it might not be the FHA limit rules that are in place. There's some flexibility in the amount of house that you can buy. But again, you just have to be careful because those FHA rules kind of are a guardrail to make sure that you don't overextend yourself if that's something you're concerned of. But me personally, knowing what I want to do and knowing how the market is, I think that I might not be able to leverage a FHA loan right now with how high the prices are. Like I might have to go to one of those other products, but there's opportunities out there.
So is 2 the limit, the number of times you can use FHA loan?
Well, when I say 2, I mean like if you leverage it as a multi-unit first, like what I suggest people to do is say, hey, before you buy your forever home, you know, buy your multi-unit owner occupied. So now you took advantage of that low money down there. Then you can go ahead and buy a condo or a single family home, leveraging another FHA loan.
Okay, thank you.
So you think we can actually do it from, so say we got the distance, you know, factored in, right? Within the mile radius, and then you're able to justify why you're moving. Is it something that you can do within the same calendar year?
If it's justified, like maybe you're moving for your job or things like that, I have heard that
Okay.
that you can. When I spoke to my bank about it. Now, I was trying to be sneaky a little bit, right? But I was trying to understand it. But I'm also not going to be moving every 6 months. It'd be nice to be like, okay, now I'm in Illinois, now I'm in Michigan, now I'm in Ohio. Like there has to be, it does have to show like intention of moving into it. And the fact is, yeah, to just minimize their risk as well.
And I guess one of the things to consider here is if you're wanting to do this particular strategy is to make sure that the agent that you're working with or the team that you're working with in terms of execution knows the rules and do your research, you know. It's not it's always good to ask questions and know when and what to do in terms of just really protecting the downside of it. Just anyone else who has questions? If not,
I have
I
another
actually do
one.
have another. Okay,
I
go
have
ahead,
another
Joel.
Explain to me how the depreciation would work if you're living in one unit and renting out the other 2.
Yep.
Can you-
So, well, a couple of things. Number one, it's based off of the percentage, right? So it's like 2 units and 1 unit. And one thing I do suggest as well, like anything that you do in your unit, for instance, I rehabbed my bathroom and all that. I wasn't able to write that off in that calendar year because I was already occupying and it was considered personal residence. But I'm holding on to those receipts because when I move out, according to my CPA, I can bring that back to be able to write off down the road. But everything is just a percentage of, hey, if it's in your unit, it's supposed to not count as something that you can write off, and otherwise, the house you'd be able to write off.
I didn't know. Joel, did you still have a question?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't want to jump in if you still was asking a question. So Nate, I thank you for the presentation. So just something I don't have a question. I just wanted to mention something that in addition to working with a good realtor, you want to get connected with a good mortgage person because FHA is one way that you can house hack. It's not the only way though. If you got a VA loan, you can get a VA loan and do the same thing. USDA, you could do the same thing. You can do a NACA loan the same way as well. So I would definitely say get a good realtor who's investor friendly and understands your vision, but also get connected with a mortgage broker or a mortgage lender that you can have in your pocket that you can go to. Because the reality is us realtors, we don't know everything about mortgages and the laws. That's not our lane, right? So we're not going to know everything about, I mean, we can know what the current finance, what the interest rate might be. We can probably keep on top of that, but we're not really concerned too much with it. We just want to make sure that we can get you the information that you need. Something else I wanted to mention too, because I think Pam had mentioned you know, Nate, with you living in your property, and do your tenants know that you are their landlord? One of the things that you can do, and this is what I'm going to do with my 2 oldest kids when they house hack, I'm going to have them put the property in an LLC. So then they don't, the tenants won't deal with them, they'll deal with me. So they'll think I'm the owner versus my kids being the owners. Because what I don't want to have happen, just from my experience and working in apartment buildings, a lot of residents have no qualms with knocking on your door and asking about, you know, repairs, asking about why this can get done, or they don't care. And they will knock on your door in the middle of the night. They don't care. Even things that are not even an emergency, they will do that. So to keep my kids from going out of their mind, I will be the one to step in. So that's something that you might, or anybody who want to consider doing this, maybe just ask somebody to be like your quote unquote leasing agent. You're not hiring them to be the leasing agent, but get somebody different to do the tours. Get somebody different who might pose as the property manager. So that way they got a face and a name to somebody else and not you.
Right. Yeah. No, I can't agree with you more. The only thing I would consider there is with the LLC part, is because with the FHA, it's a personal loan. And that you have to consider, because once you do an LLC, it's going to change the liability with that. It's going to change the type of loan. There's some people that get concerned when you have a personal loan and you convert it to an LLC, because the whole like call to what the heck's it called? It doesn't mean that it happens all the time, right? But when they could call the loan and pay it up. So just something to consider on the transfer of the personal loan to an LLC.
Escalation clause.
Yeah, I think the due on sale clause.
There
Due
you
on
go.
sale. There you go.
The
Yeah.
due on sale clause. So just keep that in consideration. As far as everything else, yeah, like I agree with you, and couldn't agree more about the lender, because there's other products too. There's a 203K
Yes.
right, FHA
Yep.
loan, where now you're able to get a property and not only get in low money, you can leverage financing for the repairs of that property. And so there's a lot of resources out there. So
One thing too, I'll also mention, don't be afraid to do seller financing and creative financing. So because then you can really negotiate. You got a true negotiation. One of the things that I tell people is that everything is negotiable in real estate. Like you can negotiate pretty much anything. So that's another option too. If it's a person who doesn't want to go through, you know, FHA or loans, don't be afraid to do creative financing and speak to a seller, especially if it's a tired landlord. I mean, we just heard that last week from Mitch, especially then, and negotiate. And that way, I mean, he even mentioned that you can negotiate where no interest. So yeah, I had never heard of that before. That was crazy. But yeah, so I would say don't be afraid to do that either. If it's a person who doesn't want to go through getting a loan.
yeah, who knows? Maybe you see a 3 or 4 unit and you know that the owner lives there and he's older and tired and he doesn't want to deal with all the other tenants that live right by him. And you go and offer that seller finance deal, say, I'm going to move in, I'm going to take over it, and I'm going to pay you more and transition out and then whatever. Yeah, I agree with you. That would be ideal. I would love that kind of deal.
It could be somebody too, Nate, where the owner doesn't live there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something else to think about, because they may not live there and they don't need to know that you want to house hack.
Right.
You don't need to share that with them. That's because once the transaction is done, it's my property. You know, it's really none of your business how I choose to go about this. So I would even say if it's the owner that's not living there, you could actually do that too. In fact, that's more ideal if the owner doesn't live there. Because now you ain't got to worry about the owner getting out. You know what I mean? It's just less stress and hassle for you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What else?
Any other questions, you guys? Those are great points. Kathy. Okay, I have one more question if no one else has a question.
Yeah.
So we talked about the employment earlier, and I'm going back to the FHA requirement, being owner occupied. So at least 2 years in business, right? I guess that's generally applies to other products too.
I would assume that that's pretty standard. Like anytime I've
Yeah.
went to purchase a place, they look for 2 years worth of, source of income. And even when I first started my LLC and started acquiring properties through commercial loans, I had to sign twice, right? I had to sign once as my LLC, and then I had to sign once as Nate Wilson because I was the backing of my LLC because I didn't have 2 years of history in those rental properties yet.
Gotcha. Okay, so what if I'm not employed technically? I own a business and I am employed in my business.
Right. So
I'm
now you're
running the
thinking
business for
outside
5
of
years.
questions that I can answer. That's when you go holler at that mortgage banker and and see what other options that you have.
Well, I guess it's okay. I'm gonna share something with you guys. So this is part of the okay, we're on YouTube, but okay, anyway. Part of one of the trainings that we have talked about is when you're putting together a business, it's not just for real estate, is one of the most important thing is you hire yourself. You get paid for what you do. So you can put a title on yourself or whatever it is, and then you receive your monthly payment. So for cases like this, it could be technically you are actually employed, only it's under your own LLC or under your own company. So that is something that can still go under for your personal things, such as this one when you're applying for these types of loans. Although I'm not sure if that would be part of it. It's always good to consider asking your attorney or someone else that's more knowledgeable on this process, especially depending on what state you're in. But that's definitely one thing to consider, especially when you own a business of your own, not
think it-
hired, by
It's a
a
very
private or
good
someone
point.
else's.
I have a friend personally who he makes more money than his wife, but she had to get, the loan in her name for the house. And that's just one of those things you have to navigate somehow. So that's good that you brought that to the table, depending on somebody's situation, to be able to, look into that and prepare for that. So you're put yourself in a position, but that's outside of my expertise.
I have a question. Can you still benefit from the real estate professional tax break if you do that, Faye?
That I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to
Okay,
do
thank
more
you.
research on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'll
you-
get back to you.
Yeah, Pam, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you should be able to, as long as either you or the spouse hit enough, hit the 750 hour mark with your management, your real estate management task.
Okay, thank you.
Some people I saw was what they do is that they hire a relative, wife or husband as the property manager, and they actually get, just one of the tricks in there. They get paid for it. So yeah. Any other questions, you guys?
Or comments. It's been a while since I've.
Comments as well?
So
I'm gonna share with you the 9-step guide for multifamily guide, since someone brought it up earlier in terms of like really making an assessment before you identify what strategy would actually best fit you. And one of the steps in there would be the first and second is the self-assessment part. So I'm gonna send it over to all of you guys so you can download it. And Nate, if someone else would like to keep in touch with you, how do we, reach out to you and stay in touch?
Well, yeah, I guess you can go to justnatewilson.com. Again, I haven't revisited this for a while, but it is something that I'm passionate about, even though and I plan on digging a little bit deeper and refining some of my this and my knowledge, and as I move forward to do this again, and I like helping people. So you go to justnatewilson.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I'll probably be coming out with some content in the future and put some concrete things together on different things to consider. So I dive deeper myself. So we'll be learning together and growing together.
Nate, were you with us with Sterling's group too?
Yes.
I knew it, that chair in that room. I said
Yeah.
that he looks familiar. Like, okay. All right, I'm sorry.
And then there's silence, right?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I meant to, after I muted, I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yep,
And you guys, that's the power of networking right there.
yeah.
I'm
But
trying to
yeah.
get you deep to come over. I talked to you deep a few times, and he is scared, and he's not scared to come over, but he's like ready to purchase. But I think he's afraid, and I think analysis paralysis has gotten him. And I said, listen, you need to join and come on over. And I told him, because the amount of support that's in this group is insane. And he was like, okay. I even sent him the link and everything for him to join. And I don't know what happened. Then he reached out to me. He was like, I want you to analyze this deal with me. Because he was trying to purchase in Texas. And I was like, okay, not a problem. Just send me the numbers. I'll look it over and we'll look it over together or whatever. So yeah, I'm trying to get him to come over too. So we'll see what happens. Matter of fact, I'm gonna text him right now.
I mean, I'll admit, Faye kind of like picked me up from the bottom because that was a while ago, right? She dusted me off a little bit. She's like, hey, you're ready to start doing this stuff. I'm like, man, I haven't. So
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get you
Yeah.
deep to come over. I am.
Yes, and if you also, guys, if you have like someone in mind that you want us to bring on to do presentation for you, to host the workshop, such as Nate, we have, Tate tomorrow, and then the upcoming ones and the previous ones that we have. If you have anyone in mind, just let us know. We can make it happen.
Thank you.
Johnny?
I got nothing, man. Nate, thanks for coming through, brother, and sharing. And yeah, let us know what we can do to help, or opportunities to partner up with you with future, projects and deals you got going on. And yeah, just thanks again, brother.
sounds
Yeah,
good. Pleasure.
yeah,
Thank
1
you.
hour isn't enough, right? I mean, I feel like there's a lot more for us to learn with Nate, so hopefully we can get him back in the future to talk more about some of the nitty-gritty of this process. So, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to Nate. I'll be dropping in the description box his contact information so we can all stay in touch. All
Cool.
right. Well, thanks everyone for such a wonderful night again, and we'll be seeing you again tomorrow. And yeah, appreciate everyone. Thanks, Nate, for a great presentation and for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Thanks, Pam, and everyone else that's in
Thank
here.
you,
We'll see you
Nate.
again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Good night.
Bye-bye.